Testing, testing. Black Man Renaissance. This is Black Man Renaissance. Welcome to another episode of Black Man Renaissance, brought to you by Trap Crate. Today I'm very excited because we're going to talk about a topic that I think needs to be spoken about. And I want to start off by saying, I want to start off with the story, right? Back in the day, I knew this guy. He was just messing around with a girl, right? Okay, so just a little fling. She ended up getting pregnant, whatever. She had a boyfriend, whatever. A couple years later, I stopped messing with the guy. We're no longer friends, but she hit me up and says, "Hey, you know what? I'm having second thoughts about who the father of the child is, and I think it might be your friend." Come to find out, my friend was the father. For 2 or 3 years, her boyfriend had thought that he was the father. Now, with that being said, I want to welcome my guest, Carnell Smith, who's the founder and executor of
Citizens Against Paternity Fraud. That was my former advocacy group. Okay. But I'm now known as Carnell Smith, the paternity coach, who helps women, men, and families dealing with issues and questions about family identity using DNA, law, and advocacy.
Okay. And you're also the author of?
I am the author of Trapped by Law. Stop paying child support for paternity fraud. It has happened to over 1 million men that we know of so far, and that includes boys as well.
Wow. Okay. So where did your journey start with the whole paternity fraud?
Wow. My journey. First, thanks, Steve, for letting me come on to, is it Black Man Renaissance?
Black Man Renaissance, yes, sir.
Black Man Renaissance. Sounds like a very timely and eloquent name for a show. So first, thanks for the invite. I hope the audience finds this session will be edutaining, informative, educational. So my journey starts with an ex-girlfriend making a wrong phone call. See, I broke up with her after about 2.5 years. She said some things to me that I didn't have to take. And I broke up with her on February the 15th. And you know what February the 15th is? The day after Valentine's Day.
Right.
Well, a few months later, she contacts me and she says these words, these 7 words that no man wants to hear from an ex-wife, from an ex-girlfriend, or ex-fiance. I'm pregnant and you're the father.
Wow.
After hearing those words, I'm like, wait, what you mean? I haven't seen you, girl. I haven't seen you in months. And she says, well, you remember February 14th, right? I'm like, yeah. She said, that's when I got pregnant. And Steve, I thought the Trojan man had let me down.
Oh, so you were doing your best to avoid the situation, but it still happened.
Well, I was told that's what happened.
So you thought, yeah.
And after, this is a person I dated for 2.5 years, never known her to lie about the smallest thing. Look, a small thing, never knew her to lie about anything. So I didn't suspect a thing. But what I did tell her, I says, if you think this is going to bring us back together, not happening. But I will take care of my child. Okay. I said, are you sure? And she said, absolutely. So I take care of the child for the next 11 years without a court order, doing what we want. Look, we want good men to step up to the plate. We keep telling men we want them to step up, be responsible, take care of your business, handle yours, a whole bunch of other quick, cute, cliche statements. But you know what we never say? We never say, mamas, you need to tell the truth from the beginning, because you're the only one that knows during your window of conception whether or not somebody else could be the daddy. Well, 11 years later, after a court orders me to pay about 40% of my take-home pay, I'm married now. I got a newborn that's coming any day now. My wife is on maternity leave. I'm working 60 hours a week and I'm on call 24/7 strapped to a cell phone. Steve, I can't work no extra hours, bro. I'm already tapped out.
Right.
But when that judge ordered me to pay about 40% of my take-home pay, man, I was looking at, oh snap, man, my family's in trouble. Wife is gonna be we about to become broke real quick, real fast because I can't pay it.
Right.
My pastor's father talked me into taking a DNA test. And I'm like, I'm expecting that this test is going to come back and I'm going to prove to him this is my daughter because that's what her mama said. Right. Well, he told me about what happens to a lot of military men that he has known while he was in the Air Force. And those results came back, Steve, and it was 0.0%. And I got my world rocked.
Wow. So what was the immediate step after that?
Well, took me a minute, Steve. I'm getting this news right after I got this temporary order for 40% of my take-home pay. But guess what else they did though? They cut my parenting time down. See, all before the court got involved, I had unlimited time. I could just come pick her up from school, come by, make a phone call. When a mother went on vacation, she'd be with me. If I was traveling, she was traveling. You with me?
Right.
Because that's what we want good dads to do, right?
Exactly.
Well, after that, those results come back and I get 0%. I'm like, wait a minute, there's no way that her mother doesn't know that there's at least one other person she was involved with. Because I now know that the Trojan man didn't let me down. So I can keep buying stock in the Trojans company if you get what I'm saying. All right. The product is good. However, I subpoenaed a mother, her girlfriend, her other sibling, and I get the story that she actually was in another state with another guy 6 weeks after I broke up with her. And she said under oath, well, if it's not him, if it's not Mr. Smith, it could only be Mr. X in the other state.
So the whole time, oh, wow.
She named that dude in under 30 seconds.
Wow.
11 years later.
Wow.
I took it to court and the judge says, you cannot appeal this decision. You can't vacate it. It's your fault. You didn't find out sooner that there was a game going on and they made me pay anyway. So I appealed it to the Court of Appeals, the state Supreme Court. Well, by this time now, I've started introducing legislation that there should be no other man or boy who gets tricked and trapped under the law should have to make a choice of, do I go to jail or go to prison for a pregnancy I didn't commit? And we could prove he didn't commit it. Steve, I take this all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, proving that there's over 1 million men and boys that we know of from DNA testing, that roughly 30% of them who get a test every year. Steve, that means over 100,000 men and boys who get tested each year turn out to not be related to that kid. And the U.S. Supreme Court told me the same thing that all the other 3 courts said: petition denied.
Wow.
You would think it's over right there. Like, oh man, my family's on the line, my house is on the line, and because I now owe more than $2,500 in arrears, because I got smart then, I figured out if I keep paying her, I'm not gonna see that money again.
Right.
Steve, I sued her. I sued her for fraud, for damages, for loss of use of my money. Hey, $40,000 meant something to me at the time.
Now, wait. The whole time, once you found out that you were not the father, what did your wife say?
My wife's reaction was like, "Oh my God, you mean she lied?" And then my wife says to me, says, "Well, how could you believe her?" And I was like, "Well, I happen to be one of those people that believe people are good until you prove to me that you're evil." Well, Steve, by this time, I'm fully convinced there's a problem, right?
Right.
And my wife stopped talking after I told her, I says, I believe there was good in her just like I did in you. That conversation stopped right there. All right. But Steve,
Yeah.
I've also had a DNA test on the child I've had with my wife because after what I went through,
Mm.
I finally did win by changing the law that I helped to write.
Mm.
And I walked out of court a free man on February the 5th, 2003, saying to myself, man, free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty. This man is free at last. They could never, ever put their foot on my throat telling me to pay or go to jail, or they're going to take my paycheck. They're going to hook up and seize my bank account, take my tax refunds. I am completely out of the system. But they made me sign something that I didn't agree to. The judge wouldn't sign the order to vacate the order against me unless I waived my right to sue my ex-girlfriend.
Wow. Okay.
At this point, Steve, I'm out about $250,000 of my money. Well, not hers, mine. I wanted that money back. I was going to use that for my DNA testing business because at this point, I'm now in the DNA testing business with the lab that has helped me get the truth. And I'm finding out that there's a lot of people, listen, young, old, black, white, it cuts across all racial lines, financial lines, political lines. Listen, there are moms who are either one, not telling the truth on purpose, or making a mistake about which guy is the child's father.
Mm. Now you said, which law did you help put into legislation?
Well, let's say I started with the state of Georgia.
Okay.
So that one, that led to me then going over to the state of Florida, where a young man contacts me. At first, he wasn't serious about getting it changed. And he was talking to me like I had to convince him that he needed to do something. And what he told me was one day while I was playing with his son out in the front yard, the little boy told his mother, the grandmother, hey, I got two daddies. And grandma said, son, come here. You need to hear this. The little boy says, yeah, you one daddy, and I got so-and-so who's my other daddy. Well, that led him to getting a paternity test, Steve. And guess what those results came back at? Get ready for it.
The father.
0.0%. So because of what happened to him, that man had a conversation with me, and that started the trail for legislation for me to go meet Senator Al Lawson and Representative Curtis Richardson in Florida. And guess what? We got the law put in place in Florida. Mm. And then a young man reaches out to me about a divorce case in Oregon. After coaching him and having one of our other clients work with him, with the two of them, they got the law put in place in Oregon. So then I start drafting model legislation. I've testified in Lansing before, California. I've sent legislation to Texas, North Carolina, I guess maybe about 7 or so other states. And some of them haven't passed it yet because people want me to come. But, I couldn't come when I need to take care of bills for my business and for my house here.
Right.
So, which is why it led to me now releasing my book on Trapped by Law. I want to make sure that what I know doesn't leave this earth just with me. Mm. I want to make sure that if there's any chance I can inspire other people to become advocates for family law reform so that men and boys don't get trapped by law based on a lie or a mistake, then I want to empower those people. And some people are telling me my book is inspiring them with hope. It's telling them, well, if one guy can do it in a year, then there must be some hope and help for other people. So some people may want to work with me in a consulting capacity on how to do what I did, replicate that. And then there's those people who stuck by law right now. Like, okay, you've been to jail or you've been to prison. Mm. Do you know how hard it is to get a job after you've been convicted as a third-degree felon for being behind on child support?
Wow.
Can we say rough?
That's an understatement.
Yeah.
Now, in 2004, Governor Schwarzenegger signed into law AB 252, which allowed
California,
right, which allowed men who proved they weren't the father more resources to fight paying child support. But it expired in 2007.
But it was only a 2-year bill. That wasn't the best version of the bill.
Why is that?
Well, they made a compromise with the opposition, and they found support with Governor Schwarzenegger, which they previously did not have with the better version of the paternity bill called the Paternity Justice Act of 2000. And that would have been the bill that got introduced by Assemblyman, now Senator Rod Wright. It got passed in the Assembly, it got passed in the Senate, and it got vetoed by Governor Gray Davis when someone fed him false information. They told the governor that if he signed that bill, they would lose over $30 million in child support incentive money.
Wow.
And that was when I learned why we were facing so much opposition. The states, through the federal program, which is called Social Security, Title 4D, Section 458, which provides incentive payments and bonuses to the states for the child support enforcement program. It has two things that work against paternity fraud victims. Number one, the state only has to get an increase in the number of paternities that they get established this year over what they got established last year. Okay. Now, Steve, it doesn't say they have to be accurate. Now, let's lay those cards on the table.
Okay.
Get them signed up by any means necessary, which means now you need to know the 4 ways that men and boys get trapped by law. And number one is signing a paternity confession. Now, the technical name in some of the states is the Paternity Opportunity Program, the Voluntary Acknowledgement Program. Well, regardless of what name you call it, it works like this. Get him to the hospital or get him into the child support office, hand him the baby, tell him how much that baby looks like him. And while he is in the moment, pull out that pen and tell him you do want your baby to have a father, don't you? Here, sign here. And at that moment in time, Steve, many men and boys are signing up for 18 to 21 year or possible lifetime obligation without the benefit of legal advice. He doesn't know what his risks are.
So they're essentially coerced.
Tricked and trapped is the way I like to call it, because he doesn't know that he's thinking the people who are talking to him can be relied upon and trusted, right?
Right.
But the hospital's making $50 to $100 based on how many guys they get signed up. Are they going to tell him something that would make him reconsider signing this before he got a DNA test? No.
So basically the man's best interest is not taken into account.
Oh, no. This is best interest of the money.
Of the state.
Look, best interest of the state to get the money, because I said one of the things in the Title 4D program is that they must get an increasing number of paternities established each year. Right. The second thing is tied to the first, and that is an improvement in child support collections. Well, guess what? Once you get the guy signed up as for paternity, he is automatically, then you can go after him for the money for child support, and he has no right to see the kid in most states. Wow. So now you have the right to pay, you get duties, you get responsibilities, you don't get any participation in the child's life unless you take the next step as a single guy, and that's called legitimation. All right. The second way that these men also find themselves snookered applies very heavily to married men. Okay. It's called the marital presumption of paternity. Now, let's change that word a little bit. The marital assumption of paternity. Now, the laws in many states, including Michigan, California, and even Georgia, used to have this problem. Any children that the wife has while she's married to a husband are automatically assumed to be his. Right. Now, Steve, we got to be real about this thing. Now, if he's deployed in Afghanistan and she is conceiving a baby, that baby ain't his, and I don't need a DNA test to figure that out. Right. If they legally separated. Right. A lot of the guys don't understand that Steve, they got a legal risk. As long as she is still having relationships with other men, he has a financial risk to be signed up for child support for 18 to 21 years for each child that she has. And if any of those children are mentally or physically disabled,
Yeah.
that's a lifetime payment for him. Best thing for him is if him and her, if you can't live with your wife and y'all have decided to call it quits, you need to completely cut the cord so that her actions don't become any of your financial liabilities.
Right.
Last two, number 3 and number 4.
Yeah.
Number 3 is an incorrect default judgment.
Okay.
Steve, right now, any woman in your state could just go file a child support action against you, put down the wrong address for you, or she could put her address down, which means now Steve won't even know about the hearing. Here's the only thing that's required for the court to determine you are the legal father. Did you see this? Because if you don't know about the hearing, Steve, you're not going to show up, are you?
Right.
So if you don't assert a legal defense like due process, the fact that you don't even know the mother, that you didn't lay a finger on her, none of that matters, because guess what? On her word alone, you are presumed guilty because she said you did it. And look, that is so horrible that it is treated as if 100% of the mothers are telling the truth. Well, we got data that says that's not so. If 100,000 men and boys are being tested each year, according to the Parentage and Relationship Study done by the American Association of Blood Banks, 100,000 of them per year turn out to not be related to the child, like she said. So we know we don't get 100% of the moms telling the truth.
Right.
So the problem for the guys, for the men and the boys, we don't know which moms are telling the truth.
Right.
So that's number 3. So the incorrect default judgment happens because the guy doesn't show up at the hearing, and the judge or hearing officer can make you be the daddy. And guess when you will find out that you are not a daddy for a child?
When's that?
When your paycheck gets taken. They will issue an income deduction order. And by then, Steve, you're like, hey, wait a minute. You go into your payroll department saying, hey, wait a minute. Hold on. There's money missing out my check. I'm here today. Somebody better get me my money. I need my money today. Look, I got things I got to do with my money.
Right.
And your employer says, I'm sorry, you talking to the wrong people. Look, we have an income deduction order here for your child support. And you looking like, what? What child support? With who? What? When?
Right.
And Steve, they're gonna take your money, because the only choice for them is, if they don't take your money, then they'll have to pay it. So guess whose money is gonna be taken?
Yours.
You're gonna be robbed like you was
Highway robbery. And then the last one, number 4, mistaken identity. See, when they don't find the guy who is really responsible, they use a federal program called the data match, and they start looking for people who are similar names, variations, etc. Steve, I come across a case where a 15-year-old boy was ordered to pay child support for a 19-year-old because the boy had the same name as the 19-year-old's father. And they would not let the 15-year-old boy off of it until the mother, the little boy's mom, by the way, till she got so pissed off about it, is that she went and started telling the story on television. So now when the local child support office gets put on public spotlight, now they become cooperative and wanting to fix the problem. But for most men and boys, if you don't have legal representation and you don't know how to navigate your way through that minefield, you lose. Not because you're not smart. You lose because you don't speak the language. You don't know the law. You don't know the rules of the court, the rules of evidence. Right.
And then lastly, the reason I can say it doesn't matter about how smart you are is that I met a criminal defense attorney who was a paternity fraud victim. And this man was former Navy intelligence officer, runs his own law firm, has law offices in multiple states. But yet when he found out that his first wife had 2 children with her coworker that she had passed off as his, he couldn't get out of it.
Wow.
I said a lot, didn't I?
You did. So can you just quickly highlight the four ways again?
Real quick.
Yeah.
Number one, paternity confession. If you sign a paternity acknowledgement or a document before you get a DNA test, you're in danger. Number two, marital assumption of paternity. Now, the legal term is marital presumption.
Right.
Any children she has while she's still married to you, automatically yours. Number three, incorrect default judgment. For whatever reason, you deployed, you living out of state, you living across the country, you living in another country. You don't show up at that hearing, that baby's going to be yours and your money is going to be taken. And number four, mistaken identity. You getting tagged because your name is similar to the guy who really did it.
Wow. Jesus. Now, the other day I started doing research because I wanted to get prepared for the show, right?
Okay.
And I'm looking at the rates of paternity fraud throughout the whole world.
Uh-huh.
Jamaica. Have you heard about Jamaica?
Yeah, I've seen the stats there. It's worse than the US.
And Nigeria.
Same, it's worse there too. So what does that tell you? Oh, by the way, and I've done stories for Australia, Japan, because I'm the spokesman on this area. I am the international spokesman on the topic of paternity fraud, DNA, and law. Okay, so, and that's not a brag or a boast, but I've been doing this for over 20 years, and because I deal specifically in law and I write model legislation, and I'm a legislative consultant, I know a little something about it. Okay, and the rates of where men and boys turn out to not be related to the children is consistently anywhere from 5 to 30% all over the world. And in Michigan, I've had one a good friend of mine who tells me that through his DNA services there and court is 80% of their cases involving single people turn out to the guy is not the dad. Let me say that again. 8 out of 10 guys who get tested turn out to not be the father. So we shouldn't be asking. We should not be asking the mothers.
And this is nationwide?
No, that was in Michigan only.
Okay. Wow.
Now, mind you, the child support agencies do not track this number. Now you're like, wait a minute. They like to track how much money they collect. They like to track how many people they get signed up. Well, when I asked for data using the Freedom of Information Act, because they are largely being funded by taxpayer money,
right,
and I wanted to know how you using this taxpayer money, I asked, how much money are you spending on DNA testing?
Right.
They have very little money they're spending on DNA testing. Then I say, of the tests that you have spent money on, how many of them turn out for the state, turn out that that guy was not related to the child? They said, we don't track that information. So guess how I got it? I go to the labs who provide the contract for the state and say, hey, you know what? If we could increase the public's awareness and public knowledge, we could get more of the public to do DNA tests. So their marketing department will participate with me and they'll get me the data.
Okay, so do you get that through the Freedom of Information Act?
Oh, no. When I'm dealing directly with the lab, I'm talking business to business now.
Okay.
Because listen, think about it. Yeah. They have a compelling interest to see more DNA tests be done, right? Because it's good for business.
Right.
And the fact that we know that we don't get 100% of the truth 100% of the time, well, then why wait and allow men and boys to be surprised 1 year later, 2 years later, 10, 11 years later with a horrible surprise when we could do this whole thing like one of my ideal clients? I'm going to just give you this. This is what I think is the ideal story.
Okay.
This young man heard about me on radio or television. He called the office. I told him what he needed to do. He set up his DNA testing with us, and he did not sign that paternity paper at the hospital.
Okay.
Because I told him the truth. I says, if you the dad, you can always sign it after you get the test results that confirm what you've been told. I'm not saying that the child's mother lied to you. I'm saying you should trust but verify.
Right.
So he came by the office on the day they checked out of the hospital with himself, the mother, and the newborn baby. Well, guess what? 5 days later, we found out she had a secret.
Jeez. Oh,
and he avoided 18 to 21 years of being tricked. So he dropped her off. He dropped her off at her baby daddy's house.
yeah.
And he thanked me. He said, man, I know what happened to you. You just saved me from that happening to me.
Okay. So currently, there aren't any consequences for mothers who commit paternity fraud, right?
There's no criminal statutes. And every time we have tried to say that there should be some consequences, I mean, at least she should be, because we're talking not just $100, we're talking thousands of dollars.
Right.
And depending on the income of the guy, like I know of a paternity fraud case for a billionaire, he got jacked for $1 million a month. And the 5-year-old baby turned out to not be his. He was just as ticked off as I was about $1,800 a month. But there's no criminal charge on it, even though it's fraud. Listen, if a mother commits fraud, deception, and why do I call it fraud? Here's the thing. If you knowingly and willingly withhold material facts to induce another party for your benefit into paying you, and it's not true and it's based on falsity and information that you are knowingly hiding, that's fraud. Because think about it for a second, Steve.
Yeah.
Between the man who might be her husband, her boyfriend, her boo, the dude she knew from home, from high school back in the day, between him and her, which one of them knows that during the 60-day window of conception, look, between here and here,
Right.
between him and her, which one of them knows there's more than one person that's involved?
She's the only one that knows.
She's the only one that knows.
Right.
And so when I go before the state legislatures, I'm saying at a minimum, she should have an ethical, moral, legal, financial duty to disclose that the existence of more than one paternity candidate exists. Do she have to name everybody so she put all her business on blast? That's not what I'm asking.
Right.
I'm saying she should have to answer this question under oath. Is the guy you're accusing, is that the only possible biological father of the child? Number two, is that the only person you were intimately involved with during the child's 60-day window of conception? Steve, there's no 3 possible ways to answer those questions.
Right.
There's 2. And then the third thing you do is you do the DNA test to confirm whether or not she told the truth. So now that makes the DNA test a lie detector, now don't it?
Right. So now let's try to navigate the reasons why we think that this happens. Why do they lie?
Why do women do it?
Yeah.
I can tell you the top reasons that have come back to me from the women who would talk. Okay. Most times you get cussed out for asking. All right.
Okay.
Number 1 reason is the guy who she wants it to be.
Hypergamy.
There you go. Hypergamy. She's choosing conception. I'm sorry. She's choosing paternity after conception.
Right.
You're like, wait a minute, man, that dog don't hunt. That's not how that's done.
Right. Right.
You don't get to pick the dude. Well, she also it's the guy who she is in love with at the time, regardless of what he feels like.
Right.
Remember, I said some of the worst news that a guy can hear from an ex-wife, ex-fiance, and an ex-girlfriend is I'm pregnant and you're the father. That is not good news to him.
Right. All
right. In fact, there's some men who currently married be like, wait a minute, I told you we ain't ready to have a baby yet.
Right.
Okay. But so it's who she wants it to be. It's who she's in love with.
Right.
Who she thinks is the best provider.
Hypergamy. Yep.
There we go again, right down that street. So is she going to pick Ray, who don't even make $10 an hour, and she don't even know his legal name?
Right.
Or the simp guy who has been chasing her for all this time. He's buying her flowers. He's doing all this stuff. He's paying for her rent. He's paying for her hair to get done. Now, I'm gonna tell you who the child's dad is gonna be.
Oh yeah, the simp.
It is not gonna be Ray Ray and Road Dogg. Because look, they never even told her their legal names.
Yeah.
And she's in love with the bad boy complex.
Yeah.
But the simp guy, who is the responsible guy, he's doing something with himself. However, he hasn't grown a pair yet to where he will stop letting women walk all over it.
Right.
Now, things happen once he starts to grow a pair and they get, brass plated.
Right.
After that, but the problem for him is now that third party, the law steps in and they don't care that she tricked him. They just say, well, okay, well, you didn't figure it out in time, bro. That ain't our problem. Look, you signed the paper at the hospital or you married her. And according to the law in our state, any children that's born during the dates that you're married to her and within 360 days of your divorce, they are automatically yours. Cuz look, you better have our money or we're going to lock you up.
And also, don't they need to put a name on there just to be able to get government subsidies?
Didn't you hear me say what do they have to do to get money for the federal Social Security Title 4D Section 458? You people can look it up and see that I'm not making this up, because that was why the governor vetoed the legislation in California.
Wow.
He was more concerned about state making money off the people who they got signed up than the truth being the standard. Now think about that for a second. So now you got these men and boys who are trapped by law that they don't know about the time limits. Right. They didn't know that he was being played for a fool.
Right.
That he was being pimped. Let's call it what it is.
Yeah.
He's being used and abused for money. So categorically speaking, I say this man or boy is now going to become a slave. Because his wages, the more he makes, the more they take. And if he wanted to be an involved dad, he doesn't get any parenting time unless he learns what he needs to do then to approach the court. And even then, a lot of the dads are pissed off because all they can get is 1 day a week with the kid.
Right.
Now, let me ask you this. If you find out the child's not yours, you're not allowed to see the child, you're at risk to go to jail, prison, lose your business license. If you're like me, you had security clearance. Man, if you lose all of that, man, you are effectively killing your career,
right? Much
less your credit. Man, it took me 10 years to put my credit back below what was below 500 after this experience and bankruptcy to get it back up to 800. Why does that matter? Because when your credit gets bad from what you're dealing with, you can't even borrow money to help you with a legal fight.
Right.
And you can't use the money that you earn because you pay it. That money's being taken in child support enforcement, which is why I call my book Trapped by Law.
Now, I know that you would like to see changes, right?
Absolutely.
But what do you think are the appropriate judicial measures to be taken against women who commit paternity fraud?
Well, you can take punitive measures. I say it should be treated the exact same way they treat welfare fraud. Like the mothers who go and sign up using somebody else's kids.
Right.
So she can get a check. She claims the goldfish and the dog as dependents. So if you commit welfare fraud, you commit Social Security fraud, you lie to receive money from a public or private agency, those laws are on the books right now. You should treat paternity fraud the same way. And there should be restitution because that person got money they were not entitled to. Think about it. I would have never given my ex-girlfriend any money for her child had not that child been presented to me as mine. And as soon as that is determined to be a lie, my position is the man who has been duped and victimized twice. He's been victimized by the woman or the girl who lied about it, but now he's further being victimized by the court. And the court's position is the truth is irrelevant. And sad to say this, Steve,
Yep.
if the guy signs that document, that paternity confession now in many states, if he signs that document, he is waiving his right to a DNA test. So it's trick after trick after trick, because if you don't know that there's a trap, you don't know how to avoid traps. So in its simplistic form, my advice for men and boys is it's okay that you trust and believe in what the mother claimed, but before you commit yourself to 18 to 21 years or possibly lifetime financial obligation and duty, confirm it. And the only way I trust, look, the only thing I don't trust the lookalike test.
Yeah.
You can't hold no baby up next to me no more and tell me about how much that baby look like me.
Yeah.
Not when I have met guys who look like me, and then you find out the lady dates guys like you because that's her type. So Steve, if she dates 3 guys that look alike, which one the baby daddy? If you only use the lookalike test.
Right.
Unreliable.
Right.
But it's used in court, and women will try to come in there, hold up a picture and say, look, he looked just like him.
Yeah, man. You know, I think, you know, you've always heard the saying, mama's baby, daddy's maybe.
How true it is, man.
Yeah. Now, since you've been advocating, right, since your journey for advocacy, what have been some of like the best turnouts?
The best turnouts?
Yeah.
The best turnouts from pure advocacy only exist in 2 states, and I'm gonna name them.
Okay.
Ohio and Georgia. Now, why is it that these 2 are the best out of all 50 states and U.S. territories? Is that these 2 states don't have any time limits on the case for that man or boy who's been falsely named as the father of a child, as long as the case is still active. Let me tell you how good that is.
Okay.
One of my clients found out that the adult kids who were in their 20s were not his, and he was able to go after the ex-wife because, listen, the fraud didn't occur when he got the test done. The fraud occurred when his wife, while he was married, was knowingly having affairs during their marriage and deceiving her husband into supporting her lifestyle, and her children. Well, we don't allow for fraud in any other reason. And from my perspective, the fact that she's the mother should not afford her any special privilege or an excuse to be to avoid any responsibility and accountability for committing fraud against another human being and endangering that person's freedom and liberty. Because that's exactly what it is. And for some men, they may join the MGTOW movement, you know, men going their own way.
Right.
I completely understand guys who opt out after they see what happens to the guys that they consider to be the good guy.
Right.
Look, we're not even talking about the simp right now.
Right.
We're talking about the stand-up guy that they like, man, if I was going to be a better man, I want to be like him. You get me? Yeah. But when they see what happened to that guy when he hit family court, and now they're both in their 50s, and his buddy's been wiped out by family court, finds out none of the kids are his, done lost his retirement money. He spent tons of money trying to see kids that didn't he find out are not his. Man, the guys in MGTOW be saying, see, dude, you need to come on our side. In fact, you should have came sooner.
Right. When I ask that question, I know you've been advocating. What are some of personal stories of people that you've worked with that have saw good turnouts?
All right. So some of the stories you've heard about. So I had a client who we met at court because I was providing DNA testing services on site at the courts. And the difference that those guys who come across to me was they were going to get a compelling reason to take a DNA test. You hear me?
Right.
I end up with an offensive lineman from the NFL saying that he was going to take the test because the NFL Players Association highly recommended to him that he needed to do it. But first, let me tell you what he had done, though, before he got to me.
Okay.
He had what he thought was a little boy, a little girl with the young lady. He paid for her undergraduate. He paid for her graduate degree. He bought her a condo, paid for her car, and he was giving her money. All because he thought he was the father. Now, when he got injured and he got put on injured reserves and his pay got cut while he needed to recuperate and heal, she put the dogs on him. She went and filed child support enforcement because she had gotten accustomed to what he was paying when he was playing actively.
Right.
And she never expected that he would land in that courtroom that day with me. So I give the man a compelling reason to take a DNA test. And guess what? That coupled along with the advice he'd heard from the Players Association, he gets the DNA test, and you know how the story goes. If I could do one of these numbers right here and say presto changeo, bam! I did say edutaining, right? All right.
Now,
the results come back in less than 5 days. He is not the father. And I got this great big 300-pound, 22-inch neck dude look like Hulk come through the door. This dude is in tears.
Oh, wow.
Cause I think he had planned to marry her.
Wow. And
this completely flipped his world. He's like, after all I did for her. And look, I'm not calling the brother a simp now. I'm just saying he believed there was goodness in her.
Still after that?
Not after that, though.
Okay.
So that young man, he ended up winning his case because my state is one of the states that has a paternity fraud law in place.
Okay.
So he was able to defeat the criminal charge against him for child abandonment because that's how she got him into court. She claimed that he had abandoned his child. He hadn't abandoned the child. He was conserving his money since he wasn't earning the same salary while he was on injured reserve. But because she played that card on him is how he ended up in front of me getting his DNA test. And even though it hurt him, emotionally, it helped him out financially. And if he'd listened, he could have gone after her for all that money he spent on child support, buying her a car, a condo, her graduate degree, and her undergraduate degree.
Damn.
Yeah.
Damn.
And there's another football player on my YouTube channel. So, I'm the paternity coach. So that's my social media handle is paternity coach. So that's the way you find me on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Instagram, paternity coach.
Okay.
So I have a young man on my YouTube channel. He said, man, the child support people hounded him so bad. It got on his nerves. This dude had a full ride football scholarship. He quit school to go get a job so he could pay them money for child support so they would quit pestering him and worrying him to death. Well, somehow somebody talked him into taking a DNA test. And here I go again, Steve. And wham, what do you think the results are?
Negative.
0.0%, Steve. And guess what else he lost?
What's that?
He lost that full ride scholarship. He can't get that back.
Why did he lose it?
Because he quit school to get a job to pay the child support. Steve, I would never in my life, if I had a chance to mentor and coach anybody, I'm like, dude, if you got and by the way, NFL was looking at this guy.
Yeah.
He was that good. But I would never encourage a man who was doing stuff to improve himself, do not quit school.
Right.
Maybe get a part-time job, but you don't quit school because what does he do? He limits his income potential.
Right.
Because pursuing $7, $8, $10, $15 an hour when you could make $1,500 an hour as a player, Come on, man. It would have been in everybody's best interest. Leave the man alone, let him finish school, right?
Right.
He sued, and the child support agency gave him $50 back.
Oh man! Now with the first NFL player,
Uh-huh.
you said he was advised to by the NFL Players Association to get the test, right?
Yeah, well, Steve, I've been doing this for over 20 years. So guess what kind of word has gotten out across the manosphere?
What's that?
DNA testing is your friend, more so than the baby's mama.
Now, big question.
Go ahead.
Because I've had this conversation with a woman years ago, and I was like,
Mm-hmm.
hey, you know what? If my wife told me she was pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
and I was like, if you told me that you were pregnant and the baby was born, and I wanted to take a paternity test, how would you feel? And she said she wouldn't take too kindly to it. But I'm like,
Yeah,
at the end of the day, us as men, we never know.
exactly. And I tell you how you frame that conversation. But number one, I'm going to tell you is you don't need her in order to take the test.
Oh no, okay, all right.
All right. There's this thing called a motherless paternity test.
Okay.
Steve, that's you and the baby.
And that's
Steve,
that's across the United States.
Well, in most states.
Okay.
Okay.
Right.
And now if you're in New York, you have to get a doctor's approval and an excuse and a prescription for you to be able to get a DNA test.
Wow.
If you're a resident of New York. So you know what some smart people do?
What's that?
They drive their little happy behind across the state line in New Jersey,
Okay.
get their DNA test sample set up for collection there, get it done there, and have it sent to their P.O. box that they have in New Jersey. Hello, somebody.
Okay.
more than one way.
Yeah.
Look, because this is so important. If there's something not right going on, when do you want to know? Do you want to know, like one guy that was my client in New York? He contacts me after the kid turns 18. And here we go again. And the results are 0.0%.
Right.
Can I tell you that brother's pissed off? Not a little pissed.
Yeah.
Highly ticked off.
As he should
Because look, there's no way that the child's mother just figured out there was somebody else involved. She always knew there was more than one guy. Or how about this? She knew for sure that he wasn't the daddy.
Right.
But he was the stable guy. He was the good man. He was the dude with the solid income. He's the guy who had a good job. He had a good car. He was a responsible man. Oh yeah, he gonna be the baby dad. Ain't no way we gonna pin that baby on Ray and Road Dogg. No. And by the way, Ray and Road Dogg don't care no way.
Right. Now, the rates of paternity fraud are not tracked. What do you think is the rate?
Honestly,
Yeah.
it wouldn't surprise me that if we were to actually track it, that it was in excess of 40%. And I'm gonna tell you what's my basis for this.
Okay.
All right, there's this women's magazine called Cosmopolitan.
Right.
You've heard of it?
Of course.
They did a survey amongst their readers, and they asked this question: if you were in a committed relationship with your partner and you got pregnant while you were having some extracurricular fun, would you tell him? Over 50% of the women said, ain't no way I'm saying a thing.
Wow.
So with that type of attitude, and let's talk about the radical feminism. The claim is they want equality, right? But in this area, when I challenge them, it says, well, equality means equal rights, equal responsibility, equal accountability. Right. You can't have it without the other two parts of it. I consider it to be a three-pronged triangle.
Exactly.
Now, you want equal rights, but you don't want equal responsibility, and you don't want equal accountability. That says you're being intellectually dishonest.
Right.
So let's tell the truth. You want superior rights. You don't want equal rights, and you don't want to be held accountable, because when it comes to paternity fraud, the mother of the child is the only person who knows there's more than one person she's intimately involved with.
Right.
Is she going to tell her husband that she was messing with his brother? Come on, Steve. Is she gonna tell her husband she's been balling with the neighbor and that she's also a member of an active swingers club?
Of course not.
Of course not.
Right.
Then neither should she be allowed then to foist her fruit from her extracurricular activity onto the responsible man. She should be allowed to what? Get her things and her walking papers and be transported to the household of the people she had her fun with.
Right.
And I would highly encourage them to get a DNA test, because that don't mean that they did it either.
Right.
Because what? Look, I've done multiple paternity tests before with the same woman, where when I first thing I tell them is say, listen, let me tell you what I've developed. I've developed this formula that I call the ABCs of paternity, Steve. Okay. And it's in my book. It's in my book. By me using this formula that I developed is how I solved the case for one of my clients who turned out he was an identical twin.
Wow.
So I'm going to tell you about him first, and then I'm going to tell you about what I told her. All right.
Okay.
The ABCs of paternity are so important that we need to teach this to our sons, and men should know it like the back of their hand. Here it goes.
Okay.
A, the age at birth of the child. Most people think that a full-term pregnancy is 9 months. Wrong. A full-term pregnancy is 280 days. That's 10 months. Just off that math alone, you can be wrong by 4 weeks. Did you get that?
Right, I got you.
All right. B, oh, by the way, and that age at birth, most men aren't going to know that, or the boys are going to know that information, because you need to really be having a conversation with the delivering obstetrician and the nurses involved. Okay, well, you say this baby's full term. Well, guess what? Full term can be between 36 and 42 weeks. Do you see that variance right there, man? Look at that.
Yes, sir.
Well, with that variance, that if she's involved with anybody in that 6 weeks range, come on, dude. It's not based on, it's not based on the guy she had the most O's with. It's not based on the guy whose salary is the highest.
Yeah.
All right. So he can't know A. B is the birth date. Birth date is tending to be the most reliable piece of information that he can get, because it tends to be on a certified document that there were multiple witnesses at the time the child was delivered. That's usually the only piece of information that he gets.
Okay.
C, conception date. Approximately when did her eggs get fertilized? Now, this is where a lot of moms play footloose with the truth. I've had obstetricians provide me with expert testimony that moms have tried to get them to induce labor early to line up with the date she told her boyfriend, or the date she told her fiance, or the dates that she told her husband. Well, think about that for a second. If the one guy could get all of these three pieces of information at one time, age at birth, birth date, conception date, you plot these three on a calendar. With these three pieces of information, you can determine where were you during that 60-day window of conception. And that is how I cracked the code for my client, who he didn't tell me that he was one of an identical twins. He just told me that he'd gotten a DNA test for his ex-girlfriend, and results came back 99.9999 that he was the dad. And he was like, there ain't no way, man. I wasn't here. I didn't touch her. And I told him, I said, well, there's only one way that could be true, is that if you were an identical twin or a triplet or a quadruplet or something like that. He's like, yeah, I got a twin brother. Right. I was like, well, I know the science.
Right.
His brother took the DNA test, and the brother came back 99.9999, same thing as him.
So they were both messing with the same girl?
No.
Only one of them?
Only one of them.
Okay.
But because they're identical twins, and now you're in the court's got two men who have same test results.
Okay.
In the past, the court would have just made both men pay child support because they couldn't figure out who it was. But because I had developed my formula with the ABCs of paternity, I asked my client, I says, based on this window, and we put it down on the calendar, I say, where were you within this window right here? Look at it. Within this window.
Yeah.
My client was out deployed in Afghanistan in the U.S. Army in combat during that window of conception. And how could we prove that? We got his discharge papers, his DDS 214. Took that to court and they set him free in an instant.
ASAP.
What if he wouldn't have got in contact with me? Because while he was deployed, his married brother was having extracurricular fun with his girlfriend. Come on now. Making sure she wasn't lonely, making sure the bed wasn't too cold at night. She didn't have to sleep alone. Wink, wink.
Right. So how was his name entered into the fray?
Because she sued him for child support.
Instead of suing the actual father, the brother.
Yep. Listen, remember I said, in order for a woman to sue you, Steve, she's not required to submit proof. Right now, any woman could sue Steve for child support. And you better hope she puts your correct address down, because otherwise you're not going to find out about this till your employer starts taking your check. And if you're self-employed, well, then they just come straight after your financial instruments, your checking account, your money market account, your savings account. Are you hearing me, sir?
Right. I'm hearing you.
They have ways to come after you. All right. Now, the young lady who we end up doing, well, several of them that I end up doing multiple tests for, is I told her about the ABCs of paternity, and she was adamant on only giving me one name. Well, we test this guy. This guy is engaged. He's about to get married. This is the worst news that he could possibly hear. So he takes the test. And here we go again. What are the results, Steve?
0.
Goose egg.
0.
He's not the daddy. Now she comes back, because my thing with her was, let's get them all done right now at one time, and you can go one round and be done. She's trying to hold on to the, and trickle feed me the story. I'm like, girl, I've been doing this for a long time. My formula, the ABCs of paternity, does not fail.
Right.
So she reluctantly gives a second name, and here we go again, Steve. The second guy, results 0.0% paternity. So now she is questioning the science and the accuracy of the DNA testing. Are you sure these DNA tests is correct? I say, my dear.
Yeah.
I told you about the ABCs of paternity from the beginning. I said, anybody that you were involved with during that 60-day window of paternity could be your baby's father. Who is the next guy? Well, she gives another name, and she doesn't want it to be him. Oh, she is like, but it can't be him. I don't want it to be him. I don't want it to be him. Well, Steve, that's not how you pick the father. Come on.
Right.
Well, Steve, and the results come back this time over 99.999. Guess what we have found?
Pookie the father.
We have found Pookie the father. And look, and she is mad as fire, to where if you could just touch a match to her, she would have caused the match to blow up.
Oh, man. Oh.
But Mr. Pookie is excited. He is thrilled to the moon. He is glad to be the dad. And she hates, look, the first guy is the guy she wanted it to be.
Yeah.
That guy is so glad he did the test. The second guy is glad he did the test. The third guy is glad he did the test, because now he's got a reason that she still has to deal with it.
So earlier we talked about the reason, either it could be hypergamy, but so hypergamy, right? But couldn't it also be shame?
Could be, could be. I'll give you one of another success case. So, when you deal in this situation and you have people from various religious backgrounds,
Yeah.
there are some cultures that if she was not in the United States, let's just say Muslim for because that was the real case. Man contacts me. Wife is about to deliver in a local hospital in Atlanta.
Right.
He contacts me. He's kind of not feeling too good about some things, and he wants clarity.
Okay.
He's heard what I said. The man seen me on television. He knows my position. My position. I don't care if you're married, just got married, been married long time. I don't care. Trust but verify with a DNA test.
Right.
So I go to the hospital after the baby's delivered, and I do the sampling. I do the genetic sampling right there on him, the mother, and the newborn baby. Now, no sooner than I get back to my office, I get a phone call. The wife is trying to offer me 10 grand to make those results come back and say her husband is the daddy. Did you hear what I just said?
I heard you. Yeah.
She wants me to ensure that the results come back and say that her husband is the father. She says, you don't understand. In my culture, my religion, I will be stripped naked and beaten publicly, whipped in the streets. I'm like, well, I'm sorry, boo. And I know in America, that'd be kind of hard for her to do if she'd go ahead and get the police involved. Right. All right. Fortunately for her, she's not overseas.
Right.
All right. Because stoning would be what would happen.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
All right, Steve, here we go again. And you know it. Here it goes. You ain't even got to guess. What are the results? 0.0%. Guess who is a newly divorced woman?
Wow. Well, she's lucky. That's all that is.
Yeah, tell me about it. Tell me about it. Now, I consider that a success story because this man found out within the baby's first week of life, married man, just like that single guy who came by. And why? All because we do these shows like yours and television and others, is we're increasing public awareness that there is a real thing called paternity fraud. Look, feminists hate me for calling it paternity fraud. They say you should call it paternity misidentification or misattribution of paternity. Bull feathers. It's paternity fraud. You are trying to take resources and cause a man to work his lifetime thinking he has children, having a duty and obligation or responsibility to support someone else's kids without his consent. I said, if you think that it's not going to matter to him, I said, tell you what, let's get the test done and he finds out the truth and let him make an informed decision.
Right.
Oh no, the feminists do not want that to happen. They say that's not fair to women. Now, can you say with me that's a ridiculous argument?
That's very ridiculous.
especially when they say they want equal rights.
Right.
Carnell pushes back and says equal rights comes with the other two.
Right.
Equal responsibility, equal accountability.
Right.
If you're just like the client that I took with me on the Dr. Phil show, married doctor on staff at 2 hospitals, he's a teaching doctor.
Right.
His wife has an affair with the coworker of hers, and the coworker is of a different race than him. Hello. His ex-wife still thinks he should be forced to pay her over $3,000 a month because she said so and she is accustomed to getting that money.
Right.
Now, you know what Carnell Smith's position is, right? My position is she was grown enough to have those affairs. She is grown enough to be responsible for her actions, and she needs to go see her low-income boyfriend. And she needs to talk to him about child support. And the man she cheated on, that she blew it with, she should say goodbye to all of his benefits, all of what his finances could buy and afford, because she was unfaithful.
Right.
I mean, fair is fair, right? Come
No,
on.
I agree with you there. I agree with you. Yeah, yeah, man. That brings us to another point.
Okay.
You know, because we talk about feminism and how feminists, radical feminists, don't like the term paternity fraud, right? But
Right.
when can we as men speak like men without fear of retribution?
I do it all the time, Steve. I'm going to tell you what, after you've been railroaded through the courts and you've gone through every court level like I have, where you increasingly show the courts that it is not an isolated case, and there was already legal precedence in my state for a man who had been tricked to be set free. I'm Carnell Smith. I found a man named Paul Smith, and turns out we had the same lawyer. So when I found this case doing my own legal research, I said, I'd like to meet this guy. She connects me with him, and I get this guy to come testify before the state legislature for the bill that became law that I end up using.
Yeah.
He talked about how they impoverished him so much that after they took all of his money, all he could afford to buy himself to eat was a McDonald's Happy Meal. This man's long haul truck driver, man. How you supposed to make it going from week to week living on McDonald's Happy Meals? But he said that's what happened. Now, how do we say that we want equality in a society, but we treat one group based on gender with superior rights?
Right.
Well, by the very act, you are throwing away the definition of equality.
Right.
So it takes, I'm going to have to just go ahead and say it. It takes some people like myself, you and others that have to say, well, no, I don't care whether you like us talking about it. We're going to talk about it. We're not going to sugarcoat it. We're not going to water it down. We're going to lay the cards on the table and tell you to deal with it. Because listen, the facts are the facts. Don't look, I've said this to the feminists. I said, you don't get to say this to me. You just trying to mansplain and you're trying to confuse us with the facts. We want to use our emotions as the standard.
Confuse us with the facts.
Yeah. I said edutainment.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. Yeah.
But when we start dealing with facts over fiction, emotions is not the standard for law.
Right.
A judge is called a trier of fact, not trier of feelings.
Right.
So with that being said, either the child's mother, when she makes an allegation or a claim that that's the guy that caused my pregnancy, that's the guy that helped me get pregnant, that's the guy that fertilized my egg, not this touchy-feely definition of, well, who do you believe is your child's father? I don't care what she believes. I don't care who she talks about the baby looks like. Steve, those standards are too low.
Right.
The only thing I find to be reliable in over 20 years is the science. The science says you get half of your DNA from your biological mother and you get half of your DNA from your biological father.
Right.
So when somebody claimed that's the guy that did it, there's only two possibilities. A, he did it, or B, he didn't. The DNA is going to back up the story one way or the other.
Right.
So people like us, we have to be concerned to what? Look, in the space that we're going to be in the manosphere, we're going to talk about issues for the benefit of helping guys navigate their way through the minefield so they don't fall victims to false allegations of sexual assault, false allegations of rape, false allegations of domestic violence, and now to throw into that mix false allegations of paternity. It all says the same thing. They're based on somebody lying based on gender priority and gender preference.
Right.
Well, that is not equal justice under law. And when you start talking, you start citing the 13th, 14th Amendment and other things for equal protection under the law, there has to be consequences.
Right. At
a minimum, we got to set them free.
Right.
You know these stories. What about these men who've been freed under Barry Scheck's Innocence Project, locked up for double-digit years?
Right.
Find out DNA proves somebody else in another prison 2 counties over is the actual serial rapist.
Right.
But the guy that they had locked up, he still has to fight to get out. So people like me speak up because they made me fight. You hear me? The reason I'm still doing this is because I didn't appreciate them putting me through the fight for $250,000 of my money.
That $250,000 that could have gone towards anything.
Dude, with the investment strategy that I had in place, with what I was maxing out, 401ks, stock purchases, IRAs, other investments I was doing, I would have been able to retire 5 years ago, me and my wife. Are you hearing me? Right. So when I say loss of use of my money, that's the principle I'm talking about here. Okay. And by the way, you know what happens to a guy who owes $250,000 in child support? That debt will stay with him to his grave. And if there's money in his estate, they will come after his estate. Look, child support arrears are not dischargeable.
Yeah.
So it's in men and boys' best interest to confirm the facts whenever somebody points at you and says, that's my baby daddy. Look, got her fingers crossed behind her back talking about, that's my baby daddy.
Knowing darn well that nothing's going to happen if it comes out that he's not.
Unless now you get a guy who gets help early on. Remember the football player I talked about?
Right.
He could have sued for fraud.
Okay.
He just didn't want to. Here's the thing. Some of the guys, once they become so emotionally broken and wounded from the betrayal, he just wants his freedom and he just wants to walk away.
Right.
And all right, look, I respect that. That's his choice. But then there's those guys that were like me, are like, oh, heck no, I need all of it back. I'm ready to open up a can of whoop. And I have had clients that we have successfully sued, won the fraud back, won on damages. And did you know that fraud is a tort so that you can sue for double, triple damages?
I did not know that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But that depends on whether or not the person has the fighter in them. I don't think any less of the guy who doesn't want to fight. He just wants them to, as long as they can never put their foot on his throat again, he is happy with going free and living his life. But then there's those other guys that says, oh no, everything that you took that didn't belong to you, I want it all back. And by the way, if you do it correctly, you can also join in the biological father in that suit. Wow.
So can you tell me about a case where they were able to get recompensated?
Oh, yes. Okay. Yes. Here in Georgia, one of my clients, he find out the teenager is not his. He had suspicions. He didn't know how to go about it, but guess what he figured out?
What's that?
I've seen that guy on television. I keep reading stuff about him. I saw him he was in Time magazine. We saw him on Dr. Phil. He is the guest expert on the Michael Basin show. He is a recurring guest on this show. He's been on the early show, the news show, and all of this.
Fox News.
Yep. CBS, NBC, MSNBC. He says, why am I trying to figure it out? Why don't I go hire the guy who has done it? And he is the guy that co-wrote the law. I said, well, I'll tell him what he needs to do. So what do? I connect him up with an attorney who is experienced and skilled in tort law and practicing family law. And that guy helped my client go back and get all the back child support. And the mother thought that if she filed bankruptcy after he won the judgment, she thought that if she filed bankruptcy, she'd wipe out his judgment. All she did was wipe out all the other creditors.
So in effect, she still owed that money. Right.
Oh, he's going to get his money.
What state was that?
Georgia. Listen, it can be done. It can be done, but you got to have the will. Because look, it's not like she's going to volunteer, and the child support agency is not going to help her pay it back. Right. Because their attitude is, well, hey, we followed the law. And the law says, okay, you signed that document at the hospital. Never mind, you got tricked, but you did sign it. And that gave us the right to pursue you for child support. And we did what the law says. I'm like, okay, so I explained to people, it's a waste of your time to go after them because you can't prove they did anything wrong because she lied to them.
Right.
Think about it. So you got to go with what? If you're trying to get weeds out of a yard, man, you got to get to the roots of the thing, right?
Right.
So the problem starts with the mother knowingly and willingly hiding material information. When she makes that choice between Ray Ray, Pookie, and Road Dogg, or Mr. JX, who has been gainfully employed for 10 years, he's got 2 cars, he's got a house and a side business. Oh yeah, we know who's finna be the baby daddy. It's gonna be you.
Yeah.
Well, that guy, he wasn't willing to let it go like the football player. He went after, successfully sued for fraud, and because he had the benefit of the new law that had passed for, he was able to vacate. Look, you don't want to just do like so many guys think that I'll just agree to let them terminate the child support and then have the mother adopt a child with her new boo or her new boyfriend or a new husband. Wrong. You want to have the thing vacated. Why does that matter? Vacated means the judgment gets erased like it never happened and you never were the legal father.
Okay.
And now you have the ability to go after everybody involved in the fraud. And in some cases, the biological father and the child's mother are complicit in tricking the guy into being the father. I'm talking about they are actively conspiring together saying, well, you know, girl, he make more money than I do. So we're going to let him take care of the baby. But you and me, we still going to have our fun.
Jesus.
But that's not even the worst story. Story I did in Time magazine, gentleman in Pennsylvania, his ex-wife had an affair with another person not of the same race. The ex-wife tells him that, yeah, but the father says he's not going to do anything for the baby and everything. And so he believes her. And no sooner than they get divorced, guess who marries the biological father? The ex-wife. So my client end up having to pay the ex-wife and the baby's father, pay them child support to raise their own kid because he got trapped under the marital presumption of paternity. And in the state of Pennsylvania, they treat it as if it is a conclusive presumption, even with the DNA test proving that this child's of a different race. Did you hear me, Steve?
I hear you. Wow.
And in effect, my friend got forced to pay the mother and the biological father child support. The child's over 18 now, and he's still ticked about it.
Wow.
There's no justice in that. And look,
wow.
you can't tell me that woman didn't know she was having an affair. She's a Caucasian woman, and she didn't know she was having an affair with an African American man.
Wow.
She knew. Look, she knew. And she married the guy. Do you think about it? How much unmitigated gall is that? We're talking about one slap in the face, you get the DNA test, baby's not yours.
Right.
Second slap is the court still gonna make you pay.
Even though they're married.
No. The third slap is then she marries the biological father.
And you in
effect have to pay the parents to take care of their own kid. All because your state says any children born while your wife is married to you are automatically yours. Pennsylvania is wrong on that one.
Right.
And so is Michigan. So is California, New York, and a whole bunch of other states. Took your breath away on that one, didn't it?
Yeah. What is your hope what is your hope, man?
All right, my hope is this. Is part of why I wrote my book, Trapped by Law, is to show people that you can fight back. Instead of laying down on the train track saying, man, that light just coming after me, nothing I can do, I'm gonna just lay down on the tracks and take it. Maybe if you like me, you cut from that cloth where, well, my dad said you need to fight till you got nothing left in you to swing with.
Right.
And then when you've done that, then you start getting some help. Okay. Fight to change the system. Just because it's worked that way, just because it's always been that way, don't make it right. Look, the law should be based on the truth in family court, just like it is in criminal court.
Right.
It can be. And since a judge is called the trier of fact, not feelings, then we should make the statutes, which is whatever that state's law, that's the written law, make that law say that, and make sure that men and boys who didn't adopt a child, who didn't agree or participate in assisted pregnancy, in vitro, surrogacy, any fertilization methods. Because see, in those cases right there, those men know all the facts up front.
Right.
So he's not a victim. Right. He could never be a victim in the case. And if you adopt a child, you're not a victim. You know you're not related to him up front.
Right.
That's called making an informed decision, right?
Right.
So since we are not going to ever get 100% of the moms to make a truthful and full disclosure about the existence of other paternity candidates, DNA has to become the standard. Law can be changed. So my book shows you it can be done. And I provide a whole bunch of benefits from accurate, truthful paternity.
Okay. Now, do you think that DNA testing should be mandatory?
100% mandatory at birth. Two things would happen with that, Steve.
Okay.
If you did DNA testing at birth, you would never have another problem with babies getting swapped at the hospital that you couldn't trace down and identify. What's funny about that is that whenever it has happened that moms left the hospital with the wrong baby, Steve, they said biology matters then, because they will go through hoops. They will do lawsuits and everything to reunite the mother with the right baby based on biology. So in that case, then truth matters when it came to the women.
Right.
Well, equality and equal protection under the law says you got to do the same thing when you got the wrong guy named on the birth certificate, wrong guy on that paternity confession, wrong guy based on the marital assumption or presumption of paternity.
Right.
So if you can use and by the way, I know the woman who won the Virginia Supreme Court case that allowed for DNA testing in the 80s to be used to prove paternity.
Okay.
She had a lawsuit where the father of her child was denying the child, and she needed something more accurate than the blood group testing. You know, you AB, ABO, the blood type. You know, they were accurate, but they had limited accuracy. You getting what I'm saying?
Right.
With a genetics DNA test, you can get accuracy in excess of 4 billion to 1. I've seen test results that accurate. All right. So biology should matter, not based on gender. Biology matters when women get the wrong baby leaving the hospital. That's one. Number two, it'll stop paternity fraud right up front. It'll give men something, men and boys, they'll get something they currently don't have today. And they will get the facts up front so that he can make an informed decision about that relationship. And by the way, there are some guys like me who, as a husband, I've had a DNA test with my wife and my newborn. Hey, after what I went through with the ex-girlfriend, I never wanted to deal with that again in my life.
Understood.
You can understand. I need peace of mind. My wife said she didn't have anything to hide, and that she took the test with my pastors as witnesses.
Right.
Now, if she had anything going on, that was not the right crowd for her to have as witnesses, right?
Right.
I'm happy to say that my wife is an honest woman. My ex-girlfriend was less than an honest woman.
Now,
Okay.
do you still have a relationship with the daughter?
I wish I did. Um, what so many men discover in family court is your ability to see the child is 100% dependent upon the cooperation of the child's mother. So after the results came out, the mother cut me out totally.
Okay.
See, every time we went to court, I went from unlimited time to a few days a week to no days a week. And then I found out the truth.
Right.
So we approached the child's mother and we asked her, says, listen, since we've had a relationship with your daughter, we love her, I love her, we'd like to still have a relationship with her and still do things for her directly. Let me explain to you what directly means.
Okay.
When she's with us, we spend money for her. When she's with us, we do things for her. When it comes to Christmas gifts, birthdays, and things, we do stuff for her directly. We give to her. That is not the same thing as pay or go to jail child support order, send $1,800 to your mama. You feel what I'm saying here?
Yeah.
All right. But is it a coincidence that the mother sued me after she created more expenses for herself, after she'd gotten married, bought a much bigger house, bought a new car, and calls me up and tells me that, well, I've been talking to my girlfriends and according to my girlfriends, you don't pay me enough child support. Now, Steve, I'm a kind of outspoken fellow. What do I care about what your girlfriends think or say?
Right.
Hey, I'm paying you money. I have child support order for my son. I got a college fund that I'm funding for what I think is our daughter. Mm-hmm. I'm maintaining a wardrobe for the child at my house that I pay for. Mm-hmm. And when I had the child with me, everything I pay for.
Right.
I'm like, you crazy. I'm not giving you no more extra money. You got to sue me.
I hear
that. Guess what? Her lawyer looks at my financial statement, see how much money I give to my church, to charities, other organizations that I support. And she said that I should pay that money to the ex-girlfriend. You know what I did?
What's that?
I got up and walked out because my grandmother told me, she says, if you can't say nothing nice, don't say nothing at all.
I know that's right.
and I'm going to say this to you, Steve. Yeah. I don't cuss, but I understand people who do. Mm. And in that moment of time, there could have been some words, brother. There could have been some, there could have been some words said that might have got me in trouble.
Right.
And I'm not a violent fellow, okay? But I decided it was in my best interest to just not say nothing. I got up and walked out. And it was after that day that my pastor's dad talked me into getting that DNA test. And I gave him a big old hug. I shake his hand. I'm like, man, I am so glad you told me about that. Because listen, dude, my life was essentially over. We're working 60 hours a week and on call 24/7 every week. Now they paid me extra $5,000 to carry the phone, and I was level 3 technical support. Meaning there was 2 levels you had to go through before you could get to me. Dude, there's no more hours left in the day. You know I do have to get some sleep, right?
Right.
Well, when you roll it all into a simple statement of, okay, you find out the child is not yours. You're not allowed to see the child. And you have been financially duped. And when you sued to get your money back, they fought to keep your money. Why would you remain in that system when you're not even going to be allowed to see the child? And by the way, the mother said you'd have to pay for supervised visitation and you'd have to stay under the court order. That's a deal breaker, man. There's no way. So I've been cut out. I've been cut out of the picture for over 20 years. But that's no different than the guys who I know today who are the dads, who, due to parental alienation, they haven't been allowed to see their kids for 5-10 more years. And Christmas and the holiday season is one of the loneliest seasons of the year for those dads because they don't get to see their kids and the court won't help them.
Right. Now, that brings us to parental alienation, but I want to have that on another show. I want to have
Okay.
I want to have you back. I'm
I'm
glad.
well versed in that one, bro.
Listen, I'm glad we had you here today. Thank you for accepting the invite. So everybody, this is Carnell A. Smith, founder and executive director of U.S. Citizens Against Paternity Fraud, and the author of Trapped by Law: Stop Paying Child Support for Paternity Fraud. It's on Amazon. Where else is it available?
Oh, it's only available on Amazon, but it's in ebook
Okay.
and in paperback.
Okay.
And you can learn a whole lot more about potentially working with me. I do work with a limited number of clients and referrals.
Okay.
You might need help.
Okay.
I'm gonna say, why try to navigate it by yourself? Somebody who knows the way, who has been accepted as an expert witness in multiple courts, who has direct experience in the DNA industry, law and advocacy. Hey, we increase your ability to be able to fight back once you know the truth about your family identity. So if you want to work with me, maybe I might be a good fit. Maybe you might be a good fit to work with me. And the way you find that out is you go to carnellsmith.com, carnellsmith.com, submit an information there, and my office will follow up with you, and we'll see if we might be able to work together.
Okay. Well, brother, thank you for coming. Thank you for coming. And we definitely want to have you on again. I appreciate it. Much love.
All right. Much love to you, my friend.
All right.
Merry
brother.
Christmas.
Merry
Take care.
Christmas. All right, brother.